Hi, my name is Anna Marie Picarello, and today I'm going to be talking about S, which is a novel about Balkans written by Slavenka Drakulic, who is a Croatian novelist and journalist who writes a fictional story about a character named S. All right. So in the 1990s, just to give a little bit of a historical background on what exactly was going on and what time period this was written in, this was written from the perspective of a girl during the Bosnian War. So in the 1990s, Serbia set out to ethnically cleanse Bosnian territory by systematically removing all Muslims, who are known as Bosniaks, from Serbia together with Bosnian Serbs. They attacked former Yugoslavia, and this starts the Bosnian War. So one thing that the Bosnian War is really well known for is the atrocities that occurred regarding the mass rapings and trafficking of Bosnian women. Right? So S in herself is forced to adapt to a new situation in order to survive, and this sort of shares her perspective of what is going on during the war and gives a very realistic viewpoint. So the story starts in 1993, where she has just given birth to a baby in a hospital in Stockholm. This child, however, was not desired, as she had been repeatedly raped and by Bosnian soldiers, and the child is a result of those rapings. When she found out she was pregnant, it was already too late to undergo an abortion, so she had to carry the pregnancy to term. In the following chapters, the readers are taken back in time to show how S's life sort of led to this and where her life changed. She used to be a teacher in a small village in Bosnia, where she was living in an apartment. One day, out of the blue, she was removed from her home by a soldier who takes her to the gym, to a gym where Muslims are being gathered. At the gym, the men are killed and the women enter buses without knowing their destination. And a sort of disbelief occurs at this moment because they don't really know what's going on. It was sort of out of the blue. S's mother was a Serb, but her father was a Muslim. So she was actually kind of surprised when this was happening to her, because she thought she would be exempt from any alignment in the war because she is not full Muslim. She does not consider herself Muslim. However, due to her father being a Muslim, she was viewed as a Muslim in the eyes of the society, or with regards to the war. So she didn't really have a voice in this. She was put in this group. She doesn't really know what's going to happen to her, but she does. Both of her parents and her sister end up disappearing. So when she goes to the warehouse, when she goes to a camp, she's taken to a camp. Other women and children go with her, and they sleep in a warehouse in very unsanitary conditions. It's sort of done in an aspect to humiliate them. She's assigned to assist a nurse taking care of the other woman at this camp. At the other side of the camp is a warehouse of captured men, and they do hear stories about men being tortured and slaughtered as well in this part. So during her time at the camp, there was this place called the women's room, and they would oftentimes take a lot of women there, where they would do a lot of atrocious things, such as rape or humiliate the woman. And a lot of the atrocious stories aren't exactly spoken of, because it felt to a lot of the women like the violence was almost so humiliating they couldn't really speak of it. And a lot of the stories that were spoken of were very disturbing in the book, regarding the multiple rapes of the woman and the torture and the humiliation. The Bosnian War, however, although it was put to an end, a lot of the issues that occurred are still causing issues in society today. So, for example, a lot of the trafficking of Bosnian Muslims that occurred during this time are actually still occurring today. So, a lot of the systems that set up trafficking still exist today, although there aren't women warehouses that, like, for example, occurred during this war. There's still a lot of trafficking of women that is going on in this area, and that continues to be a problem today, as there's not really a clear system in place to fight these injustices. So, going off of that, the story was overall pretty brief, but it was very in-depth. It was a more difficult read just because it did shift perspectives a little bit, and just because of the graphicness of the material. It was like a little bit of a more difficult read, a little bit more emotionally impacting. I did, however, have some quotes that personally spoke to me. I'm just going to read a little bit into them. So, starting here, these people seem to her unable to understand that for these armed men, they are guilty simply because they exist, because they are different, because they are Muslim. So this quote kind of, to me, displays that the only thing these people really have in different is the fact that they are Muslim, and for that very reason, they are targeted. And in a sense, the whole war targeted Muslims in a form of ethnic cleansing. Another quote that spoke to me reads, "The women are crammed together, sitting even in the aisle between the two rows of the seats, peering out between their feet, bundles of plastic bags of food on the rusty tin floor. The persisting head of a child next to her hangs from its mother's arms as if it's about to drop any minute." So this just shows the child is obviously scared in this situation, but the quote shows the horrible conditions. They're packed in an animalistic way. They're dehumanized simply because they are Muslim. They are viewed as less than human. All right. Another quote that really spoke to me read, "Something worse than rape must have happened to this woman, something unspeakable. But Kay cannot talk about what happened to her children." So, to me, this quote displays a sort of violence that is unspeakable. The violence that occurred against them almost seem so horrific that they're embarrassing to them. Although they shouldn't be in any regards, because it's not their fault what happened to them, it's almost unspeakable because you don't want to believe that it happened. Speaking of something makes it feel like it actually did. So it just shows the brutality of the crimes that were occurring against Bosnian Muslims in the Bosnian War. So to talk about some of the themes here, a lot of people view women to be spared during war. However, this story kind of conveys a different side of things, that women were more viewed as a weapon in this war rather than being spared. It just illustrates the atrocities that occur against them, and that they aren't necessarily spared in war. And in this case, they're more so attacked. Another theme is sort of the dehumanization, and I think that this was done by calling them S or K, which may or may not be the letter of their first name. I'm assuming based off my interpretation, but not mentioning their ways was a way to convey that this sort of could happen to anyone, and also in a way conveying that the sort of dehumanization of these people. That was another common theme I saw throughout the book. But overall, the book was a short read, but a more difficult read. So thanks. I hope you enjoyed the review.